We're back. We're gonna do some more music. This is what I'm gonna be teaching you today. This is the first song I ever learned on guitar, and I thought that the guitar people haven't been shown a whole lot of love in the music lessons lately, so I figured I'd teach you guys the basic chords that you need to play "Hurt" by Johnny Cash. We all know it's actually by Trent Reznor, but it's Johnny Cash's song. My apartment's a fucking mess. I still have a dead pixel on my camera here, but we're gonna do it anyway. So, the first thing you need to know about playing guitar is that typically rhythm guitar, if you think of just a guy playing guitar around like a campfire or at a party or something like that, he's playing rhythm guitar, he's playing chords. Chords are played using either pick, what I prefer. You can play them with your hands, your thumb, kind of. That I don't like the kind of soft tone it gives the chords whenever I play it with my hand. You can try to play with like the back of your fingernail sometimes. People do that, kind of hold your fingers like this. But for me, it's pick all the way. When you hold the pick, should I start with this? Give me a second. Yeah. Anyway, so the way you hold the pick, and if you look at this, see it on the camera, it might be a little blurry, but there's a number here that says, on this one it says 0.88 millimeters. That's a pretty like mid-range pick size, but I have a bunch of others, and you can go down to Guitar Center, Amazon, pretty much anywhere if you want to get, like, I got this one from Guitar Center. This is a 0.5 millimeter pick, so it's really thin and really, really floppy, like you can tell. This one is a really thick one. I think this one's this is probably similar to that green one that I just showed you. But there's kind of two philosophies when it comes to what pick you should use. Because they give different, here, I can show you I'm just going to play a chord here with this like kind of mid-range pick. And then I'll play it with this like super thick one that I have. Give me a second to find it. I'll play that same chord with this like super thick one that I have. You can tell that it kind of gives it a deeper tone a little bit on the thicker ones. And then on the thinner ones, kind of thinnish one I have, it's just much easier to play. So anyway, there's two kinds of philosophies on what pick you should pick as a beginner, which is you either go for a super thick one that forces you to have proper technique, because if you're playing with a super thick pick, you have to pick correctly, because or else the pick will fight you about it, basically, and you'll probably drop it. You're probably going to drop a lot of picks anyway, and if you're playing an acoustic guitar, you're going to drop one into that hole in the center of the body there. It happens to everybody. It happens all the time. But and you're probably going to lose a million picks. I had a ton in my desk drawer. I don't know where they went. Anyway. Or you can get like a super, super thin pick that is a little bit more forgiving so that you can play, whatever songs you want to learn to play. If you're just focusing on like the left hand stuff, and it's kind of like, kind of gives you a little bit of forgiveness there. So it's basically, do you want to be forced to learn the proper pick technique? Go for a super thick one. Or if you want to be a little bit more forgiving and you want to just you want to get to playing, basically, you go for a super thin one. Just don't get one in the mid-range that's kind of like, not great for learning either way. I use a mid-range pick just because it's comfortable for me and I like it. I like these Dunlop picks, because they're matte. Most of the ones that you get are like kind of shiny and like plasticky. It makes my hands sweat, it makes my thumb sweat, and I kind of like lose control of it. I like these Dunlop oh, my air conditioner's kicking on. Anyway, I like these Dunlop. They're called the Tortex. They got a little picture of a tortoise on them. They're kind of like a matte finish, so they to me they just feel a lot more comfortable. So there's a lot of different options out there for you for picks that you can buy, but I would just go down there and kind of decide, go to Guitar Center, buy a whole bunch of super thin ones or a whole bunch of super thick ones. or you know, a package of both. They're not expensive. They're like $5 for a pack of like 10. So um, yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of what we're going to be doing on the right hand. We're going to be using a pick. We're going to be strumming for this song. I know some of you guys want to learn finger style, which would be like, you know. I'm not super great at finger style, but that's a different kind of practice and a different kind of like technique that you have to work at, which we'll talk about in a different video. I'm not going to go too into it today, but so strum with either your thumb or your finger, or if that feels comfortable for you, or go out and get yourself a pack of picks. Another thing that you're going to need, since this is our first guitar video, I figured we could go over the equipment that you might need. This is called a capo, and basically what this does is you put it on here. Now, we talked a lot about keys before. This will let you play in a different key. The chords themselves are part of a key. So, talking about a different song because I can't recall what key Kurt is in. I think it's in like G. But we're talking about a different song. We're talking about Can't Help Falling in Love with You by Elvis. That's in the key of D. So if I want to play that song, then I have to play a D chord, and I have to play like an F sharp minor chord, which is like this. It's kind of a pain. And then I have to play, you know, some other stuff. But what you can do is you can put this capo on. You know, if you're kind of a beginner and you only know a few chords, you can put this capo on, and now Can't Help Falling in Love with You is just C, E minor, A minor, which I, you know, hey, those are the beginner chords that I learned, you know, like, you know, that kind of thing. So definitely go get a capo. It'll really help you as a beginner until you start to learn bar chords and things like that. It's just going to help you play a lot of your favorite songs because you can simplify them a lot using a capo. I guess we should talk about how to get set up. I have an electric guitar. If you have an electric guitar, you need an amp. This is just a little one that I got off of Amazon. You don't have to spend too much money on this. I think this one was like $100, which is, you know, it's not nothing, but amps can go for $10,000 if you get a super fancy one. If you're playing with an acoustic guitar, obviously you don't need any of that. I also recommend you getting a tuner, some kind of tuner. You can use your phone, especially if you have an acoustic. You can use your phone to tune. You can use like different. There's what I use sometimes is this thing. This is a Rocksmith cable for the video game Rocksmith. It's like the only good thing that Ubisoft ever made, and I'll stand by that every day. This literally plugs into your computer through USB and then your guitar, and you can play, you know, through your guitar, and you can use your guitar basically as an amp or a mixer, or something like that. Or you can use your computer as an amp or a mixer, and you can play guitar through it. Again, that's just if you have an electric. I think most of the people, I think Saifa has an electric, and I think Andrea has an acoustic, and then Kyle has an acoustic. That's just information for Saifa, I guess. For anybody else that wants to join and play electric. I actually prefer electric as a beginner because acoustic is really difficult to get the strings are much thicker gauge, and the it's just harder. So just recognize that you're gonna have a harder time of it if you're learning on an acoustic than if you would on an electric. That's my opinion, but anyway, so let's get into tuning. Yeah, so get a tuner. There's also, you can buy, I think I have one around here. Hold on. It's in one of my other instrument cases. I don't feel like looking for it. But it's basically a little clip-on thing right here that will show you the tuning. It does the same thing as like your phone, but it's based on the vibration, so it's a little bit more accurate. But I think a lot of these phone tuners and stuff like that are pretty accurate anyway for as much as they are. The way you tune, you always start here with your thickest string, which is the E string, The strings go E, A, D, G, B, E, going from thickest, thinnest. E, A, D, G, B, E. You want to remember that? All you got to do is remember Eddie 8 Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie. E, A, D, G, B, E. B, E. D on that. Eddie 8 Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie. If you're reading tabs and things like that, which we'll get into another time, they'll call it like this is your sixth string. Your thickest string is the sixth string. So when I talk about how to play these chords, I'm going to talk about, you know, on the sixth string, here's what you do. On the fifth string, here's what you do. We're going from the top, from the thickest string. So all you do is you just play, and then you use these knobs here to turn and either tighten or loosen the string, which will make the sound either more sharp, which means higher, or more flat, which means lower. And you just tune that, and you just, really slow. Like, don't, like, you don't have to be like yanking them around or anything like that. They're pretty. It's pretty easy to tune a guitar. The strings are pretty resilient, but just just slowly, a little bit at a time, like a quarter turn at a time. Just move it up and down until it's in tune according to your tuner. Yeah, so these are called frets. So it's kind of like, don't think about this too much because it's like, this is the first fret. This metal thing is technically the fret. It's like the fret bar or something like that. But when we talk about the first fret, we're talking about this first space on the guitar. So if I say put your first finger on the first fret of the E string, the low E string, or the sixth string, then we're gonna put it right here. This is what I'm talking about. Playing an F because it's E, and then each one of these frets is a semitone or a half step. The half step from E is F. So yeah, so I guess let me try and think if there's anything else as far as a beginner thing that you need to know. I guess we could talk about how to hold your guitar. What's really important here that you have your guitar straight across. I know you guys saw me when I was doing the little demonstration there. I was probably fucking it all up in terms of technique and whatnot because I'm lazy and I'm slouching. But don't do that. Don't be like me. You want to have your guitar pretty much parallel to the floor, and make sure that and this is really important. I was actually talking to Kyle Lechner about this. A lot of self-taught guitarists, or a lot of people who, learn later and kind of here and there without like actual, physical lessons and things like that, will develop this bad habit of putting their thumb way over here. So if I'm playing this, you see my thumb is like way high up. This is not good. This is sort of the natural, comfortable state of your hand a lot of the time. This will come to bite you later on. Really make an effort of having your thumb be as low down the back of the neck as you possibly can get it without it, like, obviously if it hurts, don't do that, but you want to have that thumb low on the back of the neck, ideally in the center of it when you play. You want to have that curled back there where you can't really see it, because that's really going to help later on when you have a lot more complicated chords where you're having to put your like second finger down here, first finger up here, do all this. Once you get to here, it's going to be a lot easier if you have it down, you have that thumb down. Second thing is when we talk about chords, we always want to curl our fingers like this. You don't want to have an inward curl on your finger like that. You want to have it nice and rounded, nice rounded shape, so that we don't. If you find yourself playing through a chord and you hear, instead of, you hear, that's because I'm not rounding my fingers enough. I'm being lazy and I'm kind of like holding it down like that instead of like up on the neck here, because my pad of my finger is actually touching one of the other strings, which is causing it to become muted. So instead of having a nice, if I don't have my fingers around it enough, we get like a, doesn't sound very nice. What else? Second. Yeah, I think that's it for like intro stuff you need to know. So let's get into the actual chords that you're going to need to play this song. So this song is in, this song's in C. Yeah, this song's in the key of C. Don't worry about that too much. So the first chord that we're going to do, and this song has a lot of like cool little practice things. Things that are good to practice. So it's got this cool like picking pattern, and it's got this cool kind of like strum pattern, not too hard. You know, the chorus is just down strums. But yeah, so when you first, so the first chord of the song is called an A minor chord. I'm gonna try and get this up into the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. So my first finger is gonna be on the first fret of the B string, second highest from the top. So string number 2, right? So because the high E, that's number 1, so B would be number 2. So first finger of the B string, second string, and then my ring finger is gonna go here to the 3rd fret of the G string, or the 3rd string. And then my middle finger, I don't mean to flip you guys off, but my middle finger is going to go to the 3rd fret of the D string here. So if we look down, and we're not going to play the low E string, we're going to start on the A string because it's an A minor chord. We always want to start on the root of the chord itself. We just go, and you just, so get your fingers into position like this. Hold them there and hold them tight. You know, you got to put a little bit of effort into this. You know, it's probably going to hurt paramount. You can see those lines on my hand, on my fingers. This is because I haven't practiced guitar in a little bit, probably a couple of weeks. So my calluses kind of softened up, but it's going to take some time. It might hurt, honestly. It might feel a little bit painful, but you just got to make sure that you're locking those strings down. Try and get your finger as close to this metal bar as you possibly can, the actual fret. That's going to help. If you have your finger way back here, you can hear that buzzing. That's, you know. And if I have it in the middle here, but if I'm being lazy and I'm not holding it down enough, then it's just going to become muted, or it's going to start buzzing, as you can hear. You want it right up against that fret as much as possible. Now, obviously, like, you can see, like, my middle finger is not right up against it because my ring finger's in the way. That's okay, but I just want it as far up as I possibly can get it. So, again, second finger, second string, 1st fret, 3rd string, 3rd fret, 4th string, 3rd fret. Okay? And then just start with your 5th string, your A string, and just slowly pick them down, just to make sure that all of your strings are ringing out nicely. And do that a bunch of times, just to hold that position there, really lock it into your mind and get it perfect. As you know, before you even start strumming them, make sure that you're in the right position. First fret, 2nd string, 2nd fret, 3rd string, 2nd fret, 4th string. Make sure you're in that correct position, because the thing about it is, when you learn something new, if you learn it wrong if you do it wrong the first time, it's kind of like the way that your brain encodes information. It takes you a lot longer to unlearn that part than it does to learn it correctly in the first place. So you really want to make sure to take this kind of slow, make sure you get it right. Get that A minor chord. So when you do the A minor chord in the song, we're going to pick these first two strings, our A string and our D string. Remember, Eddie ate dynamite. So and then we're going to strum the 5 bottom strings. Again, since we're using an A minor chord, we're not using the low E string at all, because our root note is going to be on that A. So we pluck those first 2 strings and then strum. Okay. And then the second chord that we're going to go to is a C chord. And we're going to do kind of the same thing here. 5th string, 3rd fret with my 3rd finger. 2nd fret, 4th string with my middle finger. And then that A doesn't move. Or that C doesn't move. This is so that same from the A minor chord, where my first finger is, that didn't move. We're just moving these middle 2 fingers from being one on top of the other right here. We're just moving that 3rd finger to be on the 3rd fret. These two guys get to stay where they're at. Okay, so A minor to C. The second one is a C chord. A minor to C, over and over again. Just practice that. Practice that transition, because it's gonna be slow. You guys are gonna have a hard time moving that 3rd finger because you haven't gained a whole lot of finger independence probably. And honestly, the ring finger is probably the hardest one to move, because whenever you pull your ring finger down, your other fingers kind of want to come with it. Same thing with your pinky, because they're connected by a tendon. So it takes some time to actually develop that finger independence. You can probably see it on my other hand. I can do it on both. So just realize that it's going to take some time. You're not going to have these clean transitions. Even those aren't extraordinarily clean, but it's going to take some time. You got to recognize that. You've got to practice. You've got to practice every day. So just practice transitioning between those two and just walking down that chord. I'm getting a little bit of buzz there because anyway. So and then add in that little picking, pick strum rhythm there. And then the 3rd chord of the song is, give me a second. Yeah, that's right. It's D. So it's a D major chord. Now this one's going to be an even more difficult transition, frankly, from the C chord to the D major chord. What we're going to do is we're going to put our 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the high E string, so the 1st string. We're going to put our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. And we're going to take our index finger and we're going to place it on the 2nd fret of the string above that, the G string. So it's kind of this it's literally like a triangle shape. Your fingers, 1 or 2, 3, 2. And then you're going to play your D string, your open D string. So that fourth string, you're going to include that into the chord too. And you're going to do the same exact thing where you're going to play the root note, then the next string, and strum all of them. So now instead of doing the A string and then the next string up, like we did for the first two chords, we're actually going to start on one string lower because we're plucking the root note, the D. It's a D major chord. We're starting on the D. And we're just going to play those bottom four notes on the strum as well. We're not going to play these top two strings on that strum. It's going to sound like this. You can hear D over A sounds okay, but it's just not, it doesn't sound like the song. It's not the song. And if we played, if we did all of them in there, that doesn't sound very nice. Because we're playing out of the major chord triad, which is the first, the third, and the fifth. We talked about the intervals. This C chord. You're actually only playing C, E, and G. These, you're playing C, E, G, and then another C, and then another E on the bottom, because that's the major chord triad for C. And so E isn't part of the D major. E and A aren't part of the D major triad. Might be. You don't have to worry about that too much, but just make sure that you're playing the correct strings. So for these first two chords, I know I'm kind of reiterating information here, but it's important to know. We're going to play from 5 down, and then 5 down, and then 4 down. And again, just practice those transitions over and over again, and just hit it. Do that over and over again. Really, really slowly. Get those transitions, because they're going to be hard. And then that's the entire verse of the song. That's literally... I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focused on the pain, the only thing that's real. And you can play along with the record once you get it up to speed, the record, probably the recording. And then the chorus, once you go over to the chorus, I think you do that, I didn't count it, but I think you do that 4 times, that whole thing it might be 8 times, but just, then he switches over to a G, which is first finger, second string, first finger, 5th string, up here, it's the second string down, first finger, 2nd fret of the 5th string, middle finger, 3rd fret of the 6th string, and ring finger on the 3rd fret of the high E string, so the 1st string. This one might be a little bit challenging. You gotta play on the top and bottom strings. And that's a G chord. So just practice going from your A minor, and then he's going to go into the chorus. And the nice part about the chorus is it's just 4 down strums on that G. Just do that 4 times. And then you go over to an A minor, which we've already done. A minor. It's that first chord we did. We go G, A minor. And then we're going to go to an F chord, which if you know anything about guitar, you know the F chord is supposed to be super hard, and there it is. But there's like a bunch of different ways to play it, and we're gonna play it the kind of beginner way, the kind of starting out F chord, where all we're gonna do is we're just gonna move our fingers to where we got our first finger on the first fret of the B, just like we had, our second finger on the second, or middle finger on the second fret of the G, and then our third finger on the third fret of the D. So we're just gonna kind of go in a, it's just going in a line. It's, 3, 2, 1, and then we're gonna play starting on that A. And we actually, if you can, avoid playing that high E string because it doesn't quite sound right when you do it. You just want to play these 4 strings in the internal part of the guitar, like these are the 4 inner strings. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. A little trick to it though. Remember what I was saying about keeping your fingers rounded? You can mute the high E string if you kind of relax that a little bit with your finger here. That's kind of an intermediate technique. That's kind of something that if you can't do it, it's not that big of a deal. But you can mute that string with your other fingers, with your first finger, as opposed to. But if you let that high E ring out, it's not the end of the world. And then we go to a C chord, which, hey, this transition's super easy. All we're going to do is we're going to take our middle 2 fingers and move them each up a fret to get to the C chord. Right? And we're just going to do that 4 times, I think, is in the chorus. And that's the entire chorus. You just. Go back to the verse. So practice those chords, practice those chord transitions. Those are 4 super, what is that? 5. Those are 5 super, super important chords to know. Those are your beginner, cowboy chords. Once you learn those, if you can learn all 5 of those chords, A minor, C, D, G, and F, you can play a ton of songs. Like, they're called the cowboy chords. If you've never heard of a 4-chord song, there's a really funny video on YouTube talking about 4-chord songs where these guys demonstrate how many pop songs are written using the same 4 chords over and over and over again. And it's true. It's 100% true. And especially with a capo, you can play all those songs with those open chords as well. So that's the video here today. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Feel free to text me. Feel free to, tell me if I missed something or anything like that. Yeah. Thanks, guys.